ready? Let's call to order Public Works Committee meeting for January 7th, 2025 at 6:30. Bernie Flynn, Sheila Vaccaro, and Brian Travis are on the dais. Any announcements? Darrell, you moved. Okay, you got two announcements now, same slow so we can write them down. Go ahead. You have announcements? And I'm sure you have comments, petitions, and by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Thank you, Darrell.
Darrell Cook, South 1 Street. I'd like to thank the Public Works Department and all those involved that put the temporary reflectors on the bump outs on South High Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Engineers report? That's Pannoni, right? Okay. You're up.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the connection management plan and the corrective action plan for the Goose Creek sewer system. So, by the way, my name is Mike Ellis with Pannoni Associates. So I've been preparing all the sewer engineering work, and I believe I met with you probably 6 months ago to talk about the preceding sort of phase of this planning effort. So where we find ourselves now is that we've submitted, we, on behalf of developers, have submitted sewage facilities planning modules to PADEP for approval to allow for connections of 250 East Market Street project, as well as 410 South High project, which is going to generate 70 or 80,000 gallons a day of new flow into the Goose Creek sewer system, which is about 10% more flow than it currently has right now. So as we had presented before, we've identified that there are several pipes along Maple Alley, Fosnot, South Franklin that have capacity limitations in the existing condition during peak flows. So as part of the planning efforts of DEP, they've come back with comments. And one of their comments was, their major comment was that the borough needs to establish a corrective action plan and a connection management plan for the sewer upgrades. What that is it's a commitment by a municipality to make certain improvements to the system within a defined time period. So it comes along with the financial obligation, obviously, to make those improvements. So in this case, what we did was we took the study that we had prepared in early 2024 that we had presented to the Public Works previously, that had evaluated 9 or 10 different options for sewer upgrades, had selected one particular or a 3-phased implementation approach. And we basically took that and submitted that, prepared that's what the corrective action plan is. And what that lays out is that phase 1 is to upgrade 4 pipes along on Maple Alley from Linden to Lacey, which is at an estimated cost of about $1.3 million. Phase 2 is to upgrade the next 4 pipe runs that are upstream of that from Lacey to Union at a cost of roughly $1.1 million. And then phase 3, should it become necessary, is to construct a pump station at near Franklin and Cedar Alley, that then kind of conveys flow around some of the other limited areas. So the affected areas, this is helpful. The affected area is shown in the mapping that we had prepared, which is about probably 40 or 50% of the Goose Creek system. It's the darker yellow area in that exhibit. The limited capacity pipes are the ones that are shown in red there. So the first phase, again, is to do the southernmost 4 pipe runs between, like I said, Linden and Lacey. Second phase is where the line is pointing at limited capacity pipes. Yep, those pipes in there from Lacey up to Union. And then the third phase is to go all the way up to the top of the red lines, even further up, actually a little bit above that. And right there. And that's where the pump station would go. So what the corrective action plan is proposing in concert with the connection management plan is that those upgrades would be committed within a certain amount of time and performed. and that only certain connections can occur depending on where we are with the upgrades. So what we're proposing within the connection management plan, which is the smaller document, is that a couple of small projects could connect immediately before any upgrades are done. And what we're proposing there is 27 South High. Steve Stakes has been an application that's been in front of the borough for several months, and we've been back and forth with their engineer and with their team to keep them apprised of the status. But that would be potentially 3 new EDUs, so not a tremendous amount of flow, but DEP will not approve any new flow into the system right now until this connection management plan and corrective action plan is in place. So Steve Stakes would be 3 EDUs, and then another application on 34 South High Street, which I believe is to convert a barbershop into a restaurant, would be 1 EDU. So what we're proposing as part of this plan is that the required improvements you can see on the right column there are that those 2 projects could connect immediately upon DEP approval of this connection management plan, even though no improvements will have been done yet, because essentially it's a de minimis amount of additional flow to add into the system. We're also proposing to allow for up to 20 miscellaneous EDUs within the borough before any improvements are done. And that would be under the same premise here, is that we have a couple of other small reoccupancies that might want to come in that we don't know about yet over the next year or so, that we would be able to accommodate them without them having to wait for this longer process to go through for what amounts to a de minimis impact on the sewer system. Then moving forward beyond that is 410 South High Street. And there's another table before this that mentions 250 East Market. So 250 East Market and 410 South High Street, they would then be able to connect after the phase 1 sewer improvements are completed. So that would be after that first $1.4 million sewer upgrade is completed, which we are at the early stages of design right now. We anticipate that that would be constructed by the end of calendar year 2025, at which point then they would be allowed to connect in full, both of those projects, in addition to another 20 more miscellaneous EDUs in the borough from any other odds and ends that may come in for small reoccupancies over that time period. And then moving beyond that would be getting into phases 2 and 3, which would be any other very large projects that may come in, such as North Adams Street project that's been conceptually proposed now for several hundred EDUs. So before any other large projects come in within the area that is subject to the limitations, then phase 2 would need to be implemented, or phase 3, depending on where exactly that project is located. So we wanted to present this to the Public Works Committee, because obviously this is a commitment to PADEP to make these improvements and to live by this connection management plan. What we would like to do is to submit this, subject to Public Works Committee and Council approval, to submit this to DEP at the earliest opportunity for their review. We've already met with them once, and they were receptive to this approach. We'll see what happens once they get it formally for review. But the intention then is that if DEP reviews and approves this, they're then able to then approve the sewage facilities planning for the 250 East Market and the 410 South High projects, and also immediately, fingers crossed, allow for connection of 27 South High, 34 South High, and 20 potential additional other EDU projects that could come in within the next year before any improvements are done. So that's what we're proposing. And again, the phase 1 is intended to be constructed by the end of this year. Again, to summarize, that would then allow for 250 East Market and 410 South High to connect as early as the beginning of next year. And then phase 2 can follow that, which we intend to design that at the same time as phase 1. There's a lot of economy of scale in the design of that. And then that'll be on the shelf ready to go as soon as we need it. So potentially that could be constructed in 2026, subject to availability of funding, at which point then that reduces that dark yellow area. Even every time we do improvements, the area keeps getting smaller as to the area that's limited at that time. And then phase 3 eliminates all the limitations that we've identified so far.
Any questions?
I just don't remember the phase 3. I remember phase 1 and phase 2 being proposed, but I don't remember phase 3. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah. So what happens after phase 1 and phase 2? All the pipes that are coming up vertically on the screen there, north to south, that eliminates all the problems within those pipes. We then get up to the intersection where the red line turns to the right, which is at the intersection of, just to the left there. Yep, right there, which is the intersection of, is that Fosnot and Union? Did I have that right? Yeah. There's a pipe that runs underneath of the creek there. And that pipe has been, it's already been rehabbed. It's a little bit smaller because it was pipelined. That pipelining creates a capacity limitation that impacts everything to the upstream of that creek crossing. So in order to eliminate that problem, so say we get a big development that occurs like in this area where we are right now, that would then put more flow in there. That creates a problem in that narrow pipe. So by putting in a pump station, or what we want to do is just divert the flow away from that pipe in the future. The only way that we can do that, we looked at a lot of different alternatives. The most effective way to do it was to build a pump station near, again, Cedar and Franklin in order to divert the flow, pump the flow then to the west so it goes around the limited area, and then it comes back in where we have capacity. If that makes sense. It's hard to describe here, but yeah. Essentially, if I can just show you. Long market tied in on here. Limiting reducing the amount of flow. We've now been considered on that. Because we have a lot of here. So it's just not shot up there on the map. It's in one more exactly. So we have 3 different exhibits that sort of show the initial area that's limited, and then there's a smaller area and then a smaller area beyond that. That's all. Yep, certainly.
I've been talking to people about 410 South High Street, and it is like it's in limbo right now. Are any of the alternate plans going to mess with this sort of scheduling? Do you know?
In regards to that project,
Use of that property. So if that project doesn't move forward and a different use goes in,
So
what happens?
So what we're doing is, with the improvements that are being constructed here, we're creating like 4,000 EDUs of capacity. We'll be good. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Ellis, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one is, why do we use right angles when we're trying to get sludge to go straight?
There's a little bit of a flow channel that directs
I'm
it
just
through the
asking.
manhole.
Yeah, 'cause everything you have up there is right angles.
Yep.
And all I can see is Mr. Anderson with his boots on, unclogging them. So I just don't know why, engineers always want to go right angles when it comes to sewer. The second one is the EDUs for 27 and 34 South High. Have we been progressing slowly or at pace with the DEP trying to get the department to agree that they'll allow us to let this 2 sandwich shops in? Because
So we're moving as aggressively as we can with DEP on that, which is unfortunately it's tied up with this same situation here. So I would say the good news for them, though, is that we were already well into this process, because it took a year and a half or so to figure out what the recommended solution was here. So the good news is we had already done that extremely time-consuming part before they had even come to the table. So we went as aggressively as we could with DEP, which is, I think, the discussion that I had with the committee previously, is to present a policy to DEP that would allow for them to connect immediately. DEP rejected that and said, you have to, the only way we will do that is if you formally commit to the connection management and the corrective action plan that's also required for 250 East Market and your other projects. So we prepared that. We had a meeting with DEP in early November about that and prepared that as quickly as we could to then bring that before the committee and then council so that we can try to submit that to DEP within the next 2 weeks or so, at which point we're hopeful that DEP responds within 1 to 2 months. And if it's in the affirmative, then they would be able to connect immediately.
So you're looking at the largest window 2 months out?
I can never guarantee anything with
Yeah.
DEP, but I'm hopeful that it would be within 2 months, given the conversations and that we've already had with them, and the fact that this is part of the 250 East Market Street project application that they've already had for several months, and that therefore it would hopefully be something that they would look at in a timely manner.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? Anything from the public? Mr. Metric?
Thank you. I wanted to, Bill, could you go to the map? I'm going to summarize and then I have a question for Mike. When we're talking about where we have limited capacity, any connection that proposes more flow than is out there today in that darker yellow area, I'm a little colorblind, is what we're talking about. That's the whole reason we got into this problem-solving process with Pinoni and Mike and his team to figure out what we needed to do. And we tried out 6 or 7 different solutions, but you can see how big that area is. And the connection management plan is going to let us, if DEP approves us, let us approve the mom and pop small incremental changes so that we don't hold those people up. I think that's not right to hold those people up, but that's why we're doing this. Secondly, if you could, Bill, could you please show the table again? Mike, I just want to make sure, I'm sure this is right, but this chart does not include the EDUs that are coming from 250 East Market.
Yeah, so could you scroll to the prior page?
I just want to make sure make sure it's properly accounted for.
Yeah, so this
Okay.
is this is DEP's template for this connection management plan, and they have a separate table for an application that already has a code number associated with it, and then the next page is for projects that don't have a code. So, no, yeah, it's in there. It's just the way DEP has us fill it out. It ends up on 2 different pages.
All right, Mr. Ellis, the pump station right there on Franklin, is that going to go on, how big is the pump station?
So we have not gotten into. There's not been any design or any concept.
So I have a pump station at Everhart Park, and it's very lovely. And we just put a big generator there. So I'm assuming if it's like the one at Everhart Park, there's going to be a diesel generator in the neighborhood running. And the neighbors are going to have to sit there and listen to the generator run to pump the sludge, which that's, huh?
Right. So yeah,
You also test it once a week, right?
yeah, rough. Yeah, I would imagine that would be a typical process to test once a week
Yeah.
for a limited amount of time. So yeah, I mean, I envision, again, there hasn't been any design for that at all yet. It's a very limited footprint as to where that would potentially be located, possibly in the rear of the parking lot of the facility that's right there. You want to? Sure, get that.
Just real quick, there's also a second option, which is to just make it ready for a portable generator if necessary. So that issue, whether it's a permanent generator, a portable generator, the size of it, there's a lot of details that have to be worked out, but there's no guarantee that there's going to be a diesel generator that kicks on every week and disturbs all the neighbors. That's still to be determined.
Yeah, because I know what happens pretty much down at Everhart Park, because it's just a big ass machine. It's bigger than your car. And when it kicks on, it lets everybody know in the neighborhood, and the kids jump in the park. And I would hate to see the people in East Minor, right there on Franklin Avenue, start to listen to all that diesel noise a couple times a week. So just a thought.
Sure. Yeah, we've done some other things in the past too, for different locations. Like instead of doing an actual generator, do a backup bypass pump. So there can be other options. It can be explored too once we get into the details of that station.
Anything from the public? No. Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Great. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Public Works.
Good evening. Some highlights for the past month are as follows. We're getting close to receiving the permit to remove soil deposits near the Ramsgate Apartments, as you know. We're also getting closer to recommended changes to improve aesthetics and sanitary conditions for public and private trash service in the borough. This should be discussed further in this meeting. We received updated proposals to perform a Goose Creek drainage study. I'm hoping that we'll have a recommended proposal for next month's meeting. We responded to our first significant snow of the winter season. Thank you, Daryl. That was for the markers on High Street. We finished year 2024 under our expenses budget while accomplishing our operational objectives. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple questions for you.
Yes.
Please don't leave that quickly.
Oh,
The first one I have is I was going through your expense line items.
Mhm.
Just because I'm not on finance doesn't mean I don't look at things.
yeah.
And Mr. Metrick, you may want to pay attention to what I'm going to ask Mr. Edwards. When I was going through his line items, I noticed that there was stuff in there, line item 01420-00-80, which actually came over from Building and Housing. And it was billed to Public Works. And I'm hoping that that was a error on our part because it doesn't belong. Zoning doesn't belong in our Public Works. Were you aware that, Mr. Edwards, that was on there?
Yeah, I was.
Okay. So how are we going, before we reconcile our books by the end of the year, how we I think it was around 21,000, I think it was. How are we going to rectify it? Just because you're under budget means you could be under budget another 21,000. So how are we going to back it out and charge it to the right department? So when the audit is done, it's done correctly. Do you have an answer, Mr. Edwards?
I don't know. I know Sean and I talked about, what was going on with the planning fees and all this stuff, and he mentioned, but I don't know what the long-term plan is for all that.
So, Mr. Metrick, hopefully you're going to be backing it out and charging it to the right cost center so we know what we're doing for
Well,
next year.
I can tell you why it's there. And so when we did the budget for 2024, we didn't have a line item in Building and Housing for consultant third-party expenditures. So when the calendar flipped, we changed directors. Two things happened. We outsourced zoning officer services to Yerkes, and we incurred a lot of non-subdivision and land development related planning work because council directed the planning commission to work on 4 ordinances. So we started getting bills from Yerkes and Tom Comita Associates, like you said, the dollar amount that you said. And we didn't have a line item in Building and Housing to expend it to. So I made a decision to expend it to line items that have similar kind of consultant expenditures so I could keep track of what that number would be. So I knew which bucket it would be in. And you're right, it's in Public Works. It's not where it should be in an ideal world, in an ideal, totally 100% tuned budget. But at least we have it in a bucket where we can find it and we know how much we spent on third-party zoning services and on planning services that weren't related to a subdivision land development. When you incur costs related to a subdivision land development, you can bill it back to the applicant. But when we have our planning consultant go work on a zoning ordinance like we did, we have to pay those bills. So it was a move to try and keep it in one bucket with like expenses, knowing that we had to make an adjustment to the way we budgeted those expenses in 2025. So in the 2025 budget, we now have a line item in Building and Housing that correctly projects what we're going to spend on zoning and planning services that Building and Housing can tap. I didn't want to take those dollars that we spent and create a new account. There was 2 ways to do this: create an account in Building and Housing that didn't exist in the budget, bring that to you and say, hey, we're going to expense this amount of money in Department 50. Are you okay with that? or expend it to this other account in Public Works, acknowledge that we are doing something that's a little out of the ordinary, report it to council when we go over budget, and fix it going into 2025. So I chose the latter to do that. But it's not going to create a audit issue. It does create a distortion in how much money Public Works as an operation expended and how much money Building and Housing and expended, because I've got essentially a due to, due from between the two departments that I have to reconcile. And we fix that by budgeting, by changing the budget, creating an account in Building and Housing in this year's budget that we can put those expenses in. So honestly, it's an accounting exercise. If council wants it a 50 at the end of these expenses instead of an 80, it's fine with me. But
I was wondering why we just didn't do a budget modification and then do.
That's what, that would have been one way to do it. Sure. Yeah.
And that's under Gatsby, I believe that's the right way of doing it. We do a budget modification, and then what we do is we open the line item and put it in there. Now, but for accounting purposes, yes, it is accounting detail, but it also distorts the expense, overall expense that we are incurring now in Building and Housing that we never had before. When we had people there that were certified, all those things were handled under that person. Now we're paying third parties. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but as far as accounting is concerned, and Public Works, as far as I'm concerned, as far as Public Works, I could be wrong, but it's distorting the actual expenditures in Building and Housing. They're not showing that expense of that they should be showing. And doing a budget modification is pretty simple. And we just do a line item and get it out, put it where it belongs. So do you guys think anything about it?
Just for the purpose of tidying things up, I would prefer to have it changed to the different cost center. So yeah, I would reverse it out of one account and charge it to the other. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I want to stress too, this is kind of a 1 in 100 kind of phenomenon. It's not that this never happens elsewhere and in other things. It does happen. It does happen that things show up on expenses and you're like, well, why are we $22,000 over budget on this line item? And you look in the detail and you understand something was put incorrectly, or we had an incorrect budget number in there to begin with. This does happen at the margins of financial management in the borough, has ever since I've gotten here, has ever since I've been doing this for 10 years. And what we try and do is make sure, I'm totally on board. You have to have really good departmental cost allocation so you know how much it costs to run your functional units. And you know, sometimes we're off. And when you have a really good tight accounting system, your budget's good and you're accounting for expenditures correctly, and you have additional eyes looking on it, you can find these errors more easily and you can fix them going into the next year. So I just want to stress that we've fixed this going into the 2025 budget season. The budget's active, we're using it today. And we do find things like this. We do find things where I'll take, for example, the workers' compensation bill we get and how to correctly cross-departmentally allocate a single bill from an insurance provider. That bill takes a lot of finesse and a lot of work to make sure we've got the right amount of money allocated in Building and Housing, Public Works, police, and admin. And, you know, for a couple of years, we didn't have it right in the budget.
Yeah, I agree. And I know in the past, when different departments ran out of money and other departments had money in excess, what we would do is we would transfer, you know, some monies from Building and Housing into Parks and Recreation so they could finish the year out, because you're $238,000 under budget. So if somebody else needed it, we could do it. Ms. Vaquero, good evening. Mr. Travis and I agreed that we should at least do a clerical error, a footnote into the accounting. So building and housing is actually responsible for the 21,000. I mean, you run a business. I mean, you move things.
I agree, a footnote. I don't know if it's,
It would be like a general journal entry that would just move dollars. The cash is already spent. Committa and Yerkes have cashed the checks. It would just be a matter of moving it on the books to a expense line item that didn't exist in the 2024 budget.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to just throw it in anything in building and housing.
No, no.
That would be another kind of distortion.
No, but like I said, that's where the budget modification would have came in, and made it a whole lot easier to be able to do that. We all agree that we should move it somehow back to where it belongs. And could you report to us on Tuesday on how we did it?
The journal entry.
Okay.
Is that, how about, well, tomorrow, I'll talk to Barb and see if the journal entry can get at least summarized for finance tomorrow.
Okay, great. That'd be good. Yeah, because
Probably talking about, off the top of my head, maybe 6 to 10 bills, individual bills that came from those two
yeah,
companies in
it's just important to
2024.
keep everybody in their lane and for cost accounting, and I see what you were doing, but unfortunately, the Public Works Department, it makes them look, they're 20, I don't even know if they even paid attention to it, but I did. But it doesn't belong to these guys, and it belongs to building and housing. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Edwards. Wastewater. Mr. Maple. You're the most famous guy in the borough now.
Good evening. At Goose Creek, all the emergency exit signs and plants were inspected and repaired where needed. We replaced a rotor stator and flexi shaft on a mono pump. They tore down, inspected, and cleaned both of the first stage return pumps. They inspected and cleaned all the check valves in the plant. They found a shorted out motor on our sludge tank, so they replaced that. During the heavy storms in the early part of the month, pumps 1 and 4 in our main pump station in the plant, they found numerous T-shirts in it. So they tore that down, pulled it out in the middle of the storm and replaced them. Everything's working fine. Taylor Run dropped and cleaned all 3 of their tertiary filter systems. Their primary sludge pump was installed. Their last pump with the grinder is installed. That was a little bit behind. They cracked the fitting, put it on, had to get it welded. All 4 pump stations were cleaned and inspected before the storms and the weather, and a control float and a few indicator lights were replaced at College Avenue. And the Minor Street generator runs every other Wednesday at 8 o'clock.
I know it's
How's
loud.
that?
The dogs all bark.
That's a quiet one. You want a portable one? I'll bring a green one back. That one's loud.
It was pretty loud. You guys have anything? Can you expand just 5 minutes on how we fixed or how we're fixing the sewer break in East Bradford?
I cannot.
Okay.
I was not involved. I was actually out of work
Oh, you are?
for vacation, turned into a family emergency.
Oh,
So
geez.
I was not around.
Wow. Sorry to hear about your family emergency.
Your question, though, we are still investigating that. We're going back through deeds, trying to find the actual easement.
Is it repair
question.
done?
That I'll have to.
Repair's done, Mr. Maple said. Right? It's all done?
It's unclogged. So it's really not a repair other than the wastewater's flowing.
So there was a tree in it?
Tree root balls. Yes, that was part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And yep, just kind of lodged in there, and we got that out, some other things, and it's flowing. We're still on our toes because that could happen again. But yeah, we're doing okay.
Are we able to have those T-shirts given back to us that you found? Or we don't want them?
I don't think anybody's asked that question yet.
Thank you. Sean, sorry about your, anything happened to the family. Thanks for all your hard work, though. All right, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Metric, you're going to pick this one up?
Don't have comments on the report. I'm happy to take questions about the report, but I'm prepared to talk a little bit about the Recreation Program and Administration under new business.
Well, let's, since we're here, and Keith's not available, the last month, it just seems like last week, the pickleball situation popped up when we had to approve a bill for $11,000 to give to the director of the pickleball group. And council up here was stymied over the fact that there was no management signature that was recognizable on the contract.
That turned out to be Keith's signature.
Okay, so, yeah. So now with that being, you were here. So with that being said, as council as a whole, we were discussing it. And I'm speaking for me and what happened the other meeting. Council members aren't really comfortable with department heads signing contracts that the borough manager doesn't sign also. Ms. Simone was upset about the 80-20 split on and the price that people had to pay to play pickleball. And we were supplying the land and the guy was supplying nets and balls and stuff like that. I'm assuming that you're not able to tell us why department heads can sign contracts or and your signature's not on them.
Department heads sign contracts all the time.
They do?
Yeah.
Can you tell us where without a management signature? You don't see all the contracts come through?
I don't sign every contract, no.
No?
I delegate that authority to department heads to sign contracts that have been approved.
Okay. How do you guys feel about that?
Fine with it.
They're fine with it. So that's 2 against 1, but that's okay because, you know, the pickleball thing raised a really big red flag. And we haven't been able, you know, because various problems, we haven't been able to get to a good solution of why we did an 80-20 split on anything. So we'll wait till next month.
Do you want, could you say more about what the red flag is so I can understand better?
Well, the
or
red
do you want
flag
me to
was
talk
2
me-
things. Why the borough would sign a contract and give somebody 80% of the contract. That's number 1. Number 2, I think overall, council wasn't aware that, and I wasn't aware, and I've been here 8 years, going on 8 years, that department heads could sign contracts at a whim without going through the borough manager or Barb Leonti or something like that. So that's the 2 reasons. So
I do have something to add. Soccer Shots is 80-20 as well. So I don't know if this is a standard or a routine arrangement. But I have seen the 80-20 split elsewhere and I'm looking at it right here. So just, I don't think that's shocking.
Do you want me to talk about what I was planning to talk about under 5B now? I
sure,
could
why
do
not?
that. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill, could you put up, it is an attachment. It is, yeah, it's that PowerPoint 5B programming discussion. So something that the recreation director put together. What I asked them to do basically, go ahead to the next slide. Talk about the ways in which public or organizations rent the use of space or facilities in our parks and get understanding how people do it, the scope of it, and different ways it's done. And then we can have a discussion about how we want to tune that Oh, yeah, I'm pressing the button. Sorry about that. Thank you.
That's Billy's fault.
So we started with the easy one, park rentals. If we were to put a picture up here, this would be, you want to rent that pavilion up at Hoops Park because you want to throw a party up there. You want to rent the space that's in front of the building at Everhart Park because you want to have an event there with your family or something like that. So you can, public can go on to our website and rent these spaces. I think that the rate is, this is where I need Keith because he knows it off the top of his head, but there's an hourly rate for weekday and nights. You make the reservation, you can use those facilities. And you can see that on a monthly, we didn't do any business in November, December because it's cold. We do about, $500, $600 of business a month. We budgeted 16,000 for this. Year to date, we booked $7,000. So going into the budget next year, we reduced this number to 10K. This is pretty simple. Any questions about this process? Okay. Next page. This is, you'll see this is like going up in a little more complexity. Now this is sporting activities. So who we're interacting here with are organized groups that conduct sporting activities. And this is either at Greenfield Park or Farley Field. These are both baseball diamonds, but it's not baseball all the time at both places. Now with these, this is also booked to that park rental budget. And this is also done at an hourly rate. And an organization can come on to and book with the borough to use maybe a recurring 4 hours a week at Greenfield Park for girls softball would be an example of that. And they'll book those spaces over the course of a season. So that's another example of how those facilities get booked. Now, the next one is called programming, and this is the one that gets a little more involved, and this is the one that involves pickleball. So I asked Keith to pull out our program partners. Keith could talk more about this, but this is basically coming out from the idea that the borough needs to partner with third parties to provide programming in our public parks and public spaces because we don't want to employ yoga instructors. We don't want to employ tennis instructors, but we want to offer those services to the residents. So let's focus on pickleball because that's the one that came up. So we signed an agreement with the program manager of this pickleball program, Universal Rackets, and they agree to run the registrations through the borough's hosted registration portal for a fee that's agreed upon between the borough and them. So there's revenue that comes in for the registration of the registrants to go and play pickleball. They pay that registrant fee, and in the agreement, 80% of that fee gets dispersed back to the program, either at season's end or monthly. The reason you saw this, and again, this is another financial check and balance control. I'm okay with this. The reason you saw this is that this particular program partner waited to the end of the season to request their reimbursement. The reimbursement was over $10,000, so we brought it to finance, and that's what spurred this conversation. So we were dispersing a little over $11,000 back to the pickleball program. Now keep in mind we retain 20% of that. In that case, around $2,700. So over the course of those 7 months that there was pickleball happening with these registrants through this program managed by Universal Rackets, the borough made about $2,700 off of it. The organization made about $11,000. So on this programming snapshot, you see 6 programs that are functioning. 3 of them are yoga, 1 pickleball, 1 tennis, and 1 Brandywine School of Wizardry, which is a day camp in the summer for a week. About $36,000 in revenue, 29 going back to the program partners, and the borough retains about $7,200 of that. And that gets booked to your trip and class revenue line item in your budget, which includes bus trip revenue and these kinds of programming partnership revenues. So these agreements come in, they're the form of them has been reviewed by me. We look at them. Sometimes Keith signs them. And that's how these arrangements are. This is how it's done presently in the borough. And then the last two gets this second to last slide gets into some different programming with another program called Soccer Shots, which also follows this 80%, 20%, 4-to-1 revenue split. And lastly, Keith wanted to make a point that some of our programming that we do in parks aren't revenue generating. Things like the mini golf on Gay Street, Breakfast with Santa, the Easter egg hunt are events that we run in the park. So that's where this collection of activity, this is how the pickleball bill came to council and finance and revenue through this process. Chair, if you want, we can have this conversation again next month with Keith to see if there's any refinements you want to make in this process.
You guys have any issues?
Really don't.
Either do I.
I do.
Two guys, one girl.
No, I don't actually have an issue with anything that was said, but I do think that we are currently falling a little bit short by not offering some organized parking plan for these kinds of events. Yeah. So this doesn't always apply, but I know I was berated by residents and emails after Henderson had its get together at Marshall Square Park for pictures and people were ticketed, or perhaps it was this was at Everhart. It was a prom. I go to Marshall Square, but there was one at Everhart where they all got ticketed. I don't know. Maybe I've been berated for both. It doesn't matter. That's an event that should be hosted. I don't think it is. And there should be some method for alerting somebody, whether it's the people parking or the people giving out tickets, to say this is happening. And I'm asking for a lot, and I'm asking Ramsey to do more. But I think that if I'm hosting a wedding at Everhart, that would be beautiful. But where do my guests park? And somebody should be saying, hey, if you pay this fee, you can park them all at the lot, and then a shuttle comes and takes you to the wedding. Whatever it is, that's an elaborate plan that I shouldn't say out loud. But we need stuff like that when we're having, armies of Soccer Shots babies showing up at Everhart Park. Where are those parents parking, and how are we going to communicate the best strategy there? And I'm going to stop talking. Bye.
Well, to your point, let's look at the two proms. They are so impromptu. The kids just show up, and their mothers are all Google-eyed, and the father's saying, I got to show up and take the pictures. That's
It's not impromptu.
Yeah.
We all know when those proms are happening.
We
know
do. We
what
know
to-
exactly.
We all know what time.
Yeah.
We know which lots nobody's going to ticket us in.
So what
it's not
you're
impromptu.
asking is that under Parks and Recreation, that the school district notifies Keith that they're going to use Everhart Park for 3 hours on a Friday night to take pictures, and that they should have to get a permit to do that. I'm okay with that. That's the way I think, if they want to use the parks for their stuff, we think that they should, fill out an application, because every senior class has a senior class advisor. And we'd probably have to notify the 3 schools.
We
3 high
have to
schools.
notify more, because we're talking middle school dances. We're talking like I'm asking a ridiculous. This is a ridiculous
But,
request.
if they're going to use the parks and stuff like that, they should have, we should know they're coming and have a minimum fee to use it. You
This,
know,
this is homecoming, this is junior prom, this is senior prom, this is eighth grade dance for all three schools. Every time we get asked to show up there, take pictures, everybody comes, nobody walks, everybody parks, and every once in a while, everybody gets ticketed. And then they all get really mad. And it's like,
so for when I die, it's coming, whether you realize it or not. Donahue Funeral Home, I've already put $600 into the fee I've already prepaid because we need to block the streets off because it's St. Agnes and we're taking the whole street up that day.
Bernie, I hope that's a long time from now and that the price is going to be triple what you paid for it.
Anyway, they tell you that you actually plan things that have to happen. You just don't plan for the organist. You got to plan for blocking the streets and stuff like that. So, and the string band that's coming, that's going to be in the middle of the block. So, and people did not show up to see me in my turkey outfit. Parks and Recreation, no one showed up. I was there. So, any more questions for Mr. Metrick? Yeah. So, Mr. Metrick, to our point, we should ask Keith to reach out to the school districts and tell them that in order just to run into the parks, we got to know they're there and they should have to fill out a rental form or whatever it is at a minimum cost or whatever it is.
Communicate to Keith, ask him to listen to this recording and highlight this conversation in his report next month.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Old business. Approved November and December's 2024 meeting minutes. Any issues? No issues at all. Discuss chapter 62 garbage and rubbish amendments. Mr. Edwards and Mr. Travis.
Would you, I think there are two outstanding issues. If you'd like, I can just go through them unless you'd like to
Yeah,
present it a
no,
different way.
I think you had a couple questions. I think we can just open up the discussion.
Okay. The first one I think, is relatively simple, and that is, are you okay with, we have some setbacks in there, 5 feet, 20 feet. Are you okay with using the edge of the asphalt of the alley as the starting point for the setbacks instead of some invisible right-of-way line? And that was suggested by Kristen Camp, and I do recommend that we use the edge of asphalt for setbacks.
I agree with
I
that.
agree with that. Yeah. So it's a definitive line. Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
The next one had to do with, in the cases where we have the properties bring the trash containers back 20 feet, do we want to require anything other than just getting the trash containers back 20 feet?
The only other caveat to that is if it's just a regular trash cans that we use, 35-gallon trash cans, but if they're the dumpsters or totes or they, moving back 20 feet, but they should be screened.
Yeah. I think,
It's in the ordinance already, but they should be
Exactly.
screened.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So the 5 feet, we said it had to be screened on two sides.
3 sides.
Originally 3. I don't know if that's,
Okay.
I don't know if we agreed that 3 is feasible. If it's,
It's easier for them to stay together mechanically. If it's 3 sides instead of 2. Because you have something to bolt it to.
but a lot of them are just two that are existing.
Okay.
My concern
Yeah.
is that
Okay.
Alley has quite a number of two-sided ones.
Yeah.
I feel like 2
I'm
is
fine with it.
good.
I was just
think-
saying mechanically, if they have the big totes in the dumpster, in order to keep those guys where they belong, it's a lot easier to have a back piece to hold the thing together than it is just to have 2 sides.
Are we talking about the totes? Or are we talking about 35 gallon? With the 5, I don't know where we are. Sorry.
Okay.
Both.
Let me,
So the two-sided ones in my neighborhood are for 35 gallons and they're 2 sides that are connected. So it's a back and a side. It's not right and left. or it's a hedge and so that's the two-sided thing that I don't want to write into an ordinance that that's not acceptable. That's all I want.
Yeah, that's normal.
I think that's where I am on it too. The only other thing around the screening for 5 feet, 5 feet from the alley, it would be, should we be very specific about how these totes are lined up? Let's just say there's 4 of them, you know, and then if they're under 4 or if they're over 4, it's a dumpster and they have to have full screening. Excuse me. Is there any sense to having the direction? We know we don't want them stacked in like, quads, or they should be linear.
Mhm.
Is there anything that we should require in terms of whether they're it's the best way to put this, like they're lined up along a driveway versus 4 across facing the alley?
I don't know. I don't know that you can do that. I mean, I'm just thinking about the trash truck. You know, I mean, I don't know that they can go around.
For instance, if there was a fence in someone's driveway,
Right.
would we be very specific about whether they could be along the back side of the fence, or should they be on the side?
Okay. For public trash, the way it's written right now, we're only talking about 2 35-gallon containers and 4 bags. So the only thing that would be lined up along the alley would just be 2 trash containers, plus maybe bags on top of them, or, you know, something like that. For private trash service, it's a different situation. But the limit will be 4. So then so we would be talking about those private trash customers specifically about that issue you're talking about. That would be the important case.
The linear would make it look better instead of having, 2 and 2, because they could never get to the back one because they're too big. So if they're stacked linear,
Yeah.
it's easier for them to dump it in. It's easier for their people, the waste management people, to come in and just roll it out.
Yeah.
So if we specify fenced
Yeah.
and stacked linear,
Yeah, I get your point. Aesthetically, to just have one along the alley would be better.
We're requiring
Mr.
screening for aesthetics, but like, I could see it going wrong. In other words, I could see
Exactly.
it failing because we weren't specific about how these, I mean, the
To make-
issue is with private trash.
private chat.
Right.
We're solving for that, right?
Yeah.
Right. But we're only talking about 4 containers. We're taking care of the major issue with the dumpsters. I think we've done pretty good without lining them up.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. Okay.
I just wanted to exhaust all options here
Yeah.
before we start
Sure.
writing the ordinance.
Of course. And if my guess is right, after we write the ordinance, we'll have more thoughts. So. Right.
Well, we have what's called the Galley rule here.
Mm.
Michael Galley, I don't know if you know him.
Mm.
Michael Galley was the president of the Borough Council, and Michael Galley was here for quite a while. He's a labor attorney. And the Galley rule basically says if we screw it up, we'll change it.
Oh, okay.
So that's the Galley rule that's been in effect. So, yeah, but try not to be able to do that. You
Yeah.
know, if we have them stacked in there, if we specify stacked linear behind fencing, it takes all the ambiguity out of it.
Yeah. So if you're okay, I think I can compile all the pieces and present it to Kristen. If you're okay with that, Sean, too, I don't want to.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Again, this ordinance was
Yeah.
written, you can tell it was written for public pickup.
Yeah.
And over the years, as things changed, we had the university grew, we had more student housing, we had a lot more conversion to rentals.
Right.
This is needed to be looked at for quite a long time.
And I'll add that I don't think that anybody really considered those alleys and how it would look in the alleys. All they said, like, hey, let's just get it off the front. The fronts will look good. And nobody really thought, well, what if we have just containers that are all strewn across the alleys, So I think we're going to make a big dent, a big improvement.
I agree. And we can always change it.
Galley rule. Thank you for all your help on this.
Sure.
It was a long walk.
Yeah.
You know, it's taken us, what, 5 months now?
We need to get it right.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. All right. New business, the motion to approve the connection management plan with corrective action plan for submittal to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection.
Approved.
Okay, Mr. Travis, any issues? That's a 3-0, Dana? Discuss recreation programming. We did that. Motion to approve contact for purchases of recycling trucks. Motion to approve contract for purchases of a recycling truck. Is Mr. Anderson taking the night off tonight or what? He didn't move yet.
Mr. Anderson does a lot of the heavy lifting outside of the meeting. So
How much you weigh?
was yeah, I'm on his
I'm
back.
just checking.
Yeah, I am on his
I'm
back.
just checking.
Okay. Yeah. So this recycle truck, you've already heard about it. This is CoStar's, same size as what we have, just brand new. This is under budget. I think we've done our due diligence. Our mechanics have looked at it. All kinds of small issues that we took a look at. We didn't find any concern. It's our recommendation that council approve this. Just to let you know, I believe that this is also on the Finance Committee agenda, just to make sure their eyes are on it as well. And I think that's pretty much it.
Any issues?
Nope.
We're going to be able to resell the existing one, or are we just going to keep driving it?
Well, no, we're not going to keep driving it, but what I mean, there's nothing that keeps me up at night more than having multiple trash trucks out of service, because you just don't get these like, down the road. So what I would like to do is to keep it just for an emergency, not using it all the time, because then it's going to still break down and cost us money. But I just want it working, parked to the side, maybe exercise once a month to make sure that it's working okay. So that's my plan at this point in time.
If we were to resell it, does it have really any value to anybody else?
I'll bet it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think it does.
All right. Thank you.
Remember?
That's a 3-0, Dana. Do you guys have any other business?
Just the question about whether we need a motion to direct the solicitor to, or whether that's already been approved previously and we can just revise the draft we currently have.
For what, 62? Okay.
Yeah, why don't we just have Kristen draft it and then we're one step ahead.
Other business, I got one item, Mr. Metric and Mr. Anderson, Mr. Edwards. 48 hours after the last snowstorm, during the snowstorm, many residents did not know that we had a snow emergency. Now, Borough Council was never notified. So I reached out to Dave March, and Dave March put it on the website. So at least we had it, and Billy Mann put it on the website after that. When they came to Route 842, which is West Minor Street, there were 20 cars parked on West Minor Street. The police did go down the street with the loudspeaker. But if he was doing 40 miles an hour, he was doing 30, and you couldn't even tell what he said or how he said it. If we're going to have a snow emergency, and I was going to talk about this under ACT, but I wasn't paying too close attention. Somehow the borough management needs to put boldly on our face of our website what residents need to do. We already have an action plan. If you go on our website and look up snow emergency, it'll come up. It'll tell you where to go, where not to go, what streets are snow emergency routes. It tells you everything if you know where to look. We're supposed to have another bad storm this weekend and next week. But as we move forward, And when the mayor declares a snow emergency, there's residents that don't pay attention to our website. Most of them are renters. And I'm not picking on the renters. Most of them are renters. To our police department's credit, when it's amazing. When the cops had their lights on, people were looking out their windows. Man, they moved those cars. It was crazy. They were left by 8 cars there for West End Towing, and we only towed 1 car from the 300 block of West Minor because the police went door to door, knocking on the doors, ringing doorbells because they didn't want our residents paying over $1,000 to get their car back. So borough management, it starts at the top. Mr. Metrick, you always say it starts with you. So, and when the mayor declares a snow emergency, I don't think anything else on that front of that website means anything until that snow emergency is gone. And Billy, at the top of that thing, it's the smallest thing at the top of the website that says alert snow emergency. Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't tell the people what to do. We don't, it's on the website. You just pulled it up. It's on the website, but they don't know where to go get. There it is right there. They don't know where to find that. So if we have something very large, once the borough manager notifies council that we have a snow emergency, because we all get phone calls. What's going on? We could direct them right to the front page of the website and they could click a box and it'll tell them, I had no idea that the snow emergency was canceled. It was canceled at 3 o'clock the next day or whatever. And I had to call Dave March again to ask him because the people wanted to know if they could park back on Minor Street. So that's my soapbox, Mr.
Sean, are you
Edwards.
okay if I give the first response and you add to it? Okay, well, I think we recognize we have work to do, okay? Last year, we had a conversation and we were talking about how we were going to better communicate, okay? And that has continued to this year, which we just recently discussed. Last year, we were talking about the website and how it's like a page and a half of instructions for the snow emergency, which is like too much for a resident. You really just kind of want bullet points like, you know, do if this, do this, if that, do that. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a lot. So we were talking about streamlining it. We haven't done it yet, but we talked about that. All right. So now we, as recently as today, and I think Bill Mann remembers this, we got a map for our snow emergency routes, and I asked Nick Fink, our GIS guy, still here? No. I said, hey, can you get us a database of all the properties that touch these snow emergency routes? And I thought I was asking for too much, but he said, yeah, he thought he could do that. So then I said, maybe we can, once we have those, we can do like a mass mailing, and then we send it out to all those properties. And the purpose of that letter will be, look at the website, okay? So that, you know, when the time comes, you're wondering what's going on with the snow. That way it directs all those renters and property owners and everybody else, look at the website. And then also, it would also advise them to sign up for the Ready Chesco, right? Get them to subscribe. So that happened as recently as this afternoon. So we're in process right now. We know that we can do better with the communication, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, to your point, if you look at the borough website, Billy has a scrolling thing. 1 minute is traffic alerts. Next, it's short-term rental. Next, it's whatever it is. Something that big said, click here to learn more.
Yeah.
Something like that would be awesome on the website.
Yeah.
Our snow emergency don't happen that often.
Right.
But when that right there, take that off of there and put snow emergency, yada, 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 click here, and it gives them that way there. We've done our part.
Right.
I was amazed on how many, I went down when the police came up because I was, begging them not to tow the cars because it's $1,000. And, But they said, I don't pay attention to your website.
Right,
You know, why would I? They're in their 30s.
right,
You know, there's no reason for me to pay attention to your website.
right.
So,
And even if they wanted to right now, they'd have to read.
you can't find it. Yeah, you can't find it.
It was posted on Facebook repeatedly, but not early.
No.
And, you know, people my age are maybe on Facebook, but an 18-year-old kid is not. And
Mr. Walsh isn't either.
Yeah.
He's 82.
so I'm just,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to communicate and we have to be as efficient as possible. I don't really have a solution, but we need to do more.
Yeah.
You're right.
And we're working on it.
I mean, that rolling caption like that right there, the mayor just declared a gigantic snow emergency and click here to find more. And, you know, when you run for election and you go to canvass your neighborhoods, Sheila's neighborhood's totally different. Most of those, because she's special, most of the houses there are owner occupied. And Travis's and Flynn's on my block, say there's 30 houses, 25 of them are renters. And there's 5 apartments in the 25. So there's no way we're going to be able to, you know, mail something.
Right.
Because the landlords are least responsible, as we know, for trash cans. They're not going to worry about snow emergencies. But building something that bright, that flashing or whatever, you know, we can only do so much.
And if we can find a way so that they don't have to call, you know, if we can just call them even before they, you know,
Yeah.
even for the lazy ones who don't want to
Yeah.
find out, you know?
Well, the nice thing about the police is when they got there, you know, they look at the license plate number
Yeah,
and they go on their website or however they do what they do. They do, you know, Professor Clouseau, and your phone number's on your license
Mhm.
and they call you. And you know, only a couple didn't come out. So, who knows?
not
But-
that anybody's lazy. I'm sorry.
No, but but it was embarrassing that Borough Council didn't even know that we had a snow emergency. And that's not your job. That's somebody else on the other side. But thank you.
Bernie,
Billy,
a light bulb went off up here. Tomorrow I'll do a header. It says like snow event information. So it's constantly like from October to like March, it should be one of these things headers going by with all the information so people can be prepared ahead of time if they see that. And then of course, when there is this snow emergency, in addition to where it says Christmas trees, I understand how you say it's kind of, have it there, have a special header for that. And down here with these news events, yeah, we probably should do a better job getting it all there, but tomorrow morning I'll make a nice header.
it
for
doesn't
snow
happen
event.
that often, Billy, but it's embarrassing when you're not prepared. You know, it's like going to a baseball game and don't bring your glove. You know, and that's what it was like. The mayor declared an emergency, which was the right thing to do, even though some of the people on my block gave me a hard time. It's not even snowing yet. And she calls it an emergency. I said, yeah, but she's preparing. And not everybody was proactive, you know, that way. But thank you. That will help. It says click here for more information. They could do what they need to do. You know, so
There's no limit to how many things can be there. We probably should be using that feature more often for more events, informational things like snow, and leave it there through the winter months.
well, the snow emergency one doesn't have to be up all year. You know, when the mayor declares a snow emergency, I don't know whether God bless you, whether you can plop it in there.
But have it ready to go.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Anything else, family? No. All right. We're adjourned.